All right, so I've discovered the spirit behind self-sabotage. I've discovered its name. I've discovered why it follows you. I've discovered what it wants from you and what caused it to follow you, right? I've discovered how dangerous it is and how to get rid of it. And most importantly, why you shouldn't get rid of it. My name is Derek O'Fodderwall with The Medicine Shell. I teach Igbo spirituality here on The Medicine Shell. If you're interested in the topic, go ahead and subscribe to the Patreon at patreon.com/The Medicine Shell. We have group studies in there and hundreds of books on Igbo spirituality known as Odinala, and topics like this as well as a group study where we talk about things like that, and then an in-house Dibia, a traditional doctor who, if you're afflicted with spirits like this, or you have a situation you want to discuss, maybe dreams and things like that, you would have somebody who is in the field as a native doctor that can do that for you. All of that is at patreon.com/The Medicine Shell. And before I start explaining what the spirit behind self-sabotage is, what it wants from you and why it follows you, I wanted to ask a question, and I want to see what your answer is. There's no right or wrong answer. I just need an A or a B, okay? Which means you agree or you don't disagree. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. If you want to elaborate on why you picked your answer, let me know. The question is this: do you believe people change? Right? Do you believe that people change? Okay? If you believe that people change, type A in the comments. If you do not believe that people change, type B in the comments. I want to see what you guys have to say. And with that being said, let's begin. The spirit behind self-sabotage is known as Wanche. Wanche. Towards the end of this video, I'm going to explain that name because the name teaches you why it follows you, what it wants, and who it is, right? The spirit is Wanche. It also tells you why it follows you. You understand, and why it's important to understand self-sabotage as a spirit, though I am going to go into the psychology of it. And the type of spirit that Wanche is an Ewinsu, according to Odinala Ndibo, or Igbo spirituality. The ancestors have identified this spirit as an Ewinsu. Because I know it's an Ewinsu, I now know how to treat it. And I've actually began the ritual for treating it, which I'm going to post a video on Patreon of like how to treat it and so forth, and what I've personally been doing, because it is the reason that I have not posted a video in such a long ass time. Now, to understand how the ancestors dealt with spiritual afflictions when a spirit is taking over a person's situation, or making you do something that you don't want to do, or keeping you from actualizing and manifesting the will of your chi or your creator, we have to understand how spirits are dealt with on a community level. In the ancestral cosmology, what you see in a community is what you see in an individual. What you see in an individual is what you see in the universe. The Abrahamics would say, I think they're the ones that say, as above, so below. So oftentimes, when we want to understand something about us individually, it can help to look at the spirit, or at the community. And if you want to understand the community, it is important to look at the cosmos. This is why in Odinala Ndibo, the nature is the ultimate guide for understanding, for healing, for building, and so forth. One of the things you'll see in Igbo culture is the display of violent masquerades. These particular masquerades come out at certain times of the year. They'll have these very fierce faces. A lot of them will carry weapons, and traditionally, women and children are not supposed to look at these masquerades. These masquerades, if you see them and if you don't pay them their respects, they will chase you into a forest. A lot of them will whip you. They will attack you. It's a lot of it's the source of a lot of comedy if you're looking at it with the right eye, right? Or the source of a lot of pain. But these spirits, these masquerades, will roam a community throughout certain times of the year, and they'll more or less police things, right? They'll more or less police things. If a person is not doing what they're supposed to do, like, for example, there'll be certain roads that you're not supposed to walk on in this time of the year, and those masquerades will be walking on it, and if they see you, they'll start chasing you and things like that. If you're out past a certain curfew, or if they just feel like chasing you, right? So generally when these masquerades come, only people who have been initiated into the masquerade society is allowed to see them. Now, in my own community, I'm initiated into the Owu Masquerade Society. The Owu Masquerade Society is a masquerade society dedicated to channeling the water spirit, Owumiri, in my own community, which if you're interested in a video on that, comment below and I'll go ahead and go into detail. But when you look at these fierce masquerades, they have some very interesting names, right? When you translate a lot of their names, the name will be something like grief, miscarriage, poverty. I'm trying to think of some other ones that I've seen. Strife. But what's important to know at this time is that once the community has identified something that is plaguing it, they will channel the spirit into a form, and they will place the spirit into what is known as the Okento or the Ajofia. The Ajofia is a forest with a masculine energy, meaning that if you cut off the trees and start trying to plant a forest or a farm there, nothing's going to grow. These particular forests are used to keep the things that a community does not want to continue to recur. So oftentimes when certain abominations or nso are separated or cleansed from the land, they are placed in the Ajofia. And then something very interesting happens. Once a year, the people who are trained to deal with these spirits will channel them outside of the Ajofia and into the community. They'll walk around in the community, and people will pay respects to them. As they walk by, people will hail them, people will celebrate. So imagine there's a spirit known as, by the way, trigger warning, there's a spirit known as miscarriage, right? And what will happen is once a year, miscarriage will be brought out of the Ajofia, of the forest that it's kept in. And it will be in masquerade form, and it will be allowed to roam around the community and be celebrated by the members of that community and hailed. So imagine miscarriage is walking around, really prideful kind of walk, and everybody's like, yay, hooray, and cheering for it and paying its respects and giving it all these honorific titles and things like that until it ultimately goes back into the forest and so forth, right? Now, when you look at it from this lens, you begin to see where I'm going with this self-sabotage thing, okay? Or I hope you begin to see. So that's community level. Let me bring it down to the personal level. There's this shrine in Oguta, the Obuide shrine, and they are famous. In fact, I have a book here. Hold on. This book goes into a lot of detail. This is the river goddess in Igbo cosmology. It goes into a lot of detail in what I'm going to say next. So you have this shrine in the community of Oguta, and what they do there, or they do in a lot of shrines, but what they're really good at there is identifying spirits that are connected to water that might be afflicting a person. And what they will do is they will separate a person from that spirit, right? And they will give you a new set of instructions on how to live with and coexist with that spirit. So for example, a person can have a spirit wife, right? Or a spirit husband. We'll use spirit husband, Dimiri. And a spirit husband is in the process of reincarnation. It is a spirit that latches onto you because perhaps they think you're going to be beautiful. Perhaps there's something special about you that they like, right? So they latch onto you, and from their understanding, they're your husband. You understand? Now, when this spirit is afflicting you, it tends to repel suitors, right? So you may have relations with somebody, and then all of a sudden they wake up in the morning and they just want to get out of the room. They don't know why, right? Or they have nightmares while they're with you. Or you begin to self-sabotage in the middle of relationships. You begin to put yourself in situations that assure that you cannot be in a committed relationship. You may be hyper promiscuous or just extremely prudish, but some type of imbalance that causes you issues, right? These are all symptoms. If you guys want a video on spirit husbands and spirit wives, comment below. But once they separate the spirit from the person, they'll give you a set of instructions on how to live with that spirit. So for example, now, the one they commonly do is that you'll separate from the spirit husband or the spirit wife. But once a year, every single person who was afflicted with the same thing will meet at the shrine, and they will do the dance of their spirit wife or do the dance of their spirit husband, so that they have that connection with them, which is what the spirit wanted the whole time. Right? You give the spirit what it wants, but you set the perimeters for how it's going to exist in your life. AKA, you and I will dance one time a year, but you got to let me go live my life elsewhere, and that kind of thing. Now, on a community level, oftentimes when these spirits are separated from people, they can become entertainers, right? They can become protectors, like I said earlier. They become regulators. A lot of times they become judges. A judge that can actually sit down and hear a dispute between two people and help them settle and so forth. So it really is about reprogramming the spirit. Once the spirit has been identified, telling it what to do, okay? So that's the personal level. We've talked community level. Now let's go into the cosmic level. Because if you want to understand why you have to understand self-sabotage, or anything you're trying to overcome as a spirit, listen to this. In Igbo cosmology, the creator is a dual creator. It is Chi, the masculine source, and Eke, the feminine manifestation. Eke is physical manifestation, reality, the universe. Eke goes by many names. One of her names is Uwa, which is universe. She is the wife of the Chi. The Chi, of course, goes by many different names, is the creator, is the source. The relationship between Chineke can best be understood as the idea to write a book, which is the Chi, and the book you end up writing, which is the Eke, the creation, right? That unmanifest spark creates manifest reality. And that book goes on to do a lot of things. It influences people. That influence will make people do one thing or another. It makes your life move in a certain trajectory. All those things go into Eke. So it's not just a book, but if you guys want a video on that, I do have videos on it, but if you want me to make another one, comment below. Okay. Now, the relationship between Chineke is that the Chi is at all times organizing Eke. But what is important about that for this particular subject is that whenever the Chi makes a new decree, whenever the Chi has a new order, the Chi will place a spirit there to make sure that things are done the way they are supposed to be done. On a cosmic level, this spirit is known as Ewinsu. Ewinsu is the Abara that is feared by Abara, right? It is the spirit that spirits fear. Because it is the spirit that spirits fear, and it's the one that that people take seriously, or that the forces take seriously. This is the one that is used to more or less be a police force for universal order. Our ancestors say that anytime a ritual is being done, Ewinsu is present to assure that it's done correctly. We see Ewinsu on a personal level. We see this on a personal level when we do the things that our Chi is sending us to do. There is a feeling of nervousness, a heightening of adrenaline. There's this feeling of heightened senses. All of this is the presence of the Ewinsu energy, which is also the warrior spirit or the warrior energy. This energy is there to assure that you do the thing correctly. So if you're a dancer and you have a big performance, your nervousness is necessary for you to hit the steps the way you're supposed to hit the steps. If you are a public speaker and it is your calling, you're going to have a brewing of nervousness and anxiety, and that nervousness and anxiety is going to make sure that you do the speech correctly, right? It's going to give you an extraordinary level of ability and awareness and so forth, because again, that is the spirit that was placed there to assure it is done the way it is supposed to be done, right? Now, in Igbo cosmology, those big cosmological concepts repeat themselves again and again and again on different scales and different sizes until we reach the individual. So this big scenario I described in the universe also exists within you as a person. Right? So the way things happen in the cosmos, these very big ideas, these big cosmic ideas, they are blueprints for how they happen in an individual and how they happen in nature. Okay? how they happen in an individual and how they happen in nature, how they happen in a community. Because giant concepts in the cosmos repeat themselves again and again and again and again and again into smaller and smaller forms until you reach the individual who is a remanifestation of what is happening in the cosmos, what is happening in a community, and so forth. And therefore, that Ewinsu energy manifests in small form as these little spirits known as Ewinsu. Now, I'm going to explain Ewinsu towards the end of the video, and of course explain what I did to deal with the Ewinsu that I was battling, right? But let me do this first. I actually want to explain what self-sabotage looks like on a neurological level. What is the psychology of self-sabotage? Listen to this. Neurologically, the part of your brain that is responsible for self-sabotage is your ventromedial prefrontal cortex. This part of your brain, and I have a list here, is responsible for decision-making, risk and reward processing, emotional regulation, self-perception, and identity. Pay attention to that part. Self-perception and identity. Social cognition, right? So, for example, your capacity for empathy, your ability to understand others, their intentions, morals, things like that. Impulse control, and it's also responsible for your fear, right? Fear. Let me say this, your capacity to suppress fear, not just like creating fear, but your capacity to act in spite of fear. Now, when this part of your brain is functioning well, right, I have a list of things that you tend to see. Right. So the list is you have optimized decision making, right? Your decision making is just better. Your emotional stability and resilience is a lot better. You can endure bad situations a lot better. You have a healthier self-perception. Your idea of yourself is a lot healthier. And then kind of tied to it, you're also able to motivate yourself a lot better. Right? Because those two things are tied. I'll kind of explain. And then finally, you have more balance when it comes to risk taking. You don't take thoughtless or extreme risks, but you also don't avoid risk taking because also tied to this last part, your capacity to adapt to a new situation is a lot more refined and productive. Now, the reason I'm giving the psychological breakdown of the this part of your brain, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, if anybody wants to Google it, is because it has to be understood that Odinala, right, the ancestral, what I'm calling ancestral spirituality is actually ancestral science. And you will find a lot more parallel and a lot more clarity understanding it from a scientific lens than you will from a religious lens. I often say that Odinala is not a religion. The word Odinala literally means as it is on the land, which is just observation, what somebody can truthfully observe, right? Now, because of the way we think in the African context and the way we think in the Western context, if you hear the word spirit, to a Westerner, we've now entered religion, right? Whereas with our ancestors, we understand that it's not a matter of religion, it's just a matter of existence. It is a real thing, and I think that Western science is actually slowly beginning to account for this concept of spirit, which would require a huge paradigm shift at their end. But ultimately, to understand concepts in Odinala, try to see them from a scientific lens, because Odinala is where medicines and technologies are made for our ancestors. Now, the reason it's important to understand it from a scientific lens is because what happens in spirit happens in physical. What happens in the physical happens in spirit. And as we said in the cosmic example, what happens in the chi, right, which is equated to the spirit end, is a precursor for what's going to happen in the physical. I always use the example of dancing, and I'm going to use that same example. So listen to this. In Odinala Ndibo, everybody is comprised of two parts, just as the universe is comprised of two parts. These two parts are Madam, the person, the physical aspect of the person, and Mo, the ethereal, light, unseen aspect of the exact same person. So the way our ancestors see it is that I'm a person, and then I have this aura, all over me and around me, and so forth. That is more. And it is also a part of my body, the way my arm, my heart, my legs are a part of my body, right? And I am a part of this spiritual. I am spirit, it is body, right? I am spirit, it is matter. I am matter, it is spirit, right? We're all one and the same thing. Because ultimately, it comes from this concept known as ma. Ma is the material that all things are made of. The madu is madindu, ma that is living. The person aspect, right, is me. I'm ma, but I'm living ma. And then more is the same ma, but you're stretching out the word to say like the big one, more, that kind of thing, right? So we are made of the same material, but what happens is our creator causes this ma to start condensing into a single point. Once ma has condensed into a single point, you will have at the very center its most physical form, and then as you pan out, it gets lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter until it is just light. It is just that kind of thing. But that light form, that extra form that we have around us, informs what happens to the physical, and the physical, if we are conscious on a spiritual level, is able to inform what happens in the light, right, or in more. The analogy I use, right, and this is something that was taught to me by Adibia, is that madu and more is like song and dance. Madu and more is like song and dance. A song is something ethereal. It's something that you can't put a song in a cup, right? But once it comes into existence, once it takes over a room, it makes people dance a certain way. Unless you just want to be contrary or like maybe super Caucasian. Let me not be racist. Unless you want to be really contrary, when a song comes on, it makes you dance a certain way. So let's say you have this 100-year party that's going on for 100 years, and it plays the same song every single time, over and over and over. And a group of 100 people come into the party and they dance to this song. There's a certain rhythm they're going to dance. Each of them is going to be animated slightly differently, but ultimately, if we turn the music off or we plug our ears, we can see them all moving to the rhythm of the same song. We can kind of guess what song it is, right? Because it's the same thing as animating them, though each of them may choose to express the animation differently, right? They're going to dance at the same speed. They're going to dance at a similar tempo and so forth. If that 100 people left and another 100 people came in, totally different people who never saw the first people, they will again exhibit animation by the same song, meaning that they're going to dance at a similar rhythm, similar pace, similar energy level, and so forth. And this can go on for 100 years and so on and so forth. One of the things that allowed me to really start questioning my previous very, skeptical, right? My previous very skeptical, very empirical, evidence-based way of thinking was that I thought about the fact that every 7 to 12 years, every single cell in our body is entirely new. So let's say you are 17 years old. There's not one cell in your body that you're going to share in common with you when you were 10 years old. On a physical level, you are an entirely different thing. And this continues many times. This shedding of the skin happens many times over and over throughout your life until you pass. But you never at any point begin to see yourself as an entirely different person. You never at any point start seeing yourself as somebody separate from you when you were 7 years old, even though you and 7-year-old you do not share one cell in common. There's as much physical difference between you from 7 years ago, from you when you were 5 and you today, as there is between you and your neighbor, not counting like DNA and things like that, right? Just as far as like the cells and stuff like that. But for some reason, you are being held together by this narrative of your identity. This thing is holding you together through time and space, informing you that you are still that person until you pass. That thing, that is holding you together, that song that all those cells dance to as they enter and exit the party, even without meeting the previous cells, is more, is spirit, right? It is spirit, more. The thing that is doing the dance, the physical you, the tangible you, that is mado. So you are making a huge mistake if you are trying to change the way the dancing is being done by addressing the individuals at the party. You may be able to get the first 100 people to stop clapping their hands, right? Like, let's say the song is we will rock you, and everybody comes in and goes boom, boom, clap, boom, boom, clap, right? You may get that first 100 people to stop doing the boom, boom, clap, or to dance a different way. No, dance by throwing your hands in the air instead. Don't do the boom, boom, clap. The next 100 people, and so on, as they come in, that thing is going to remanifest. So in Odinala, we understand that more is cyclical. It is like a song. It is a cycle. It's something that repeats again and again and again. This right here is a vinyl. Our idea of ourselves resembles, or let me say this way, our idea of our more resembles a vinyl. You understand? This is what we call identity. This is identity. This is the thing we call identity. What is identity? Identity is the idea that that song, that spirit is playing, that song that's being played by more is a fixed, finalized thing. So that if I put this on a vinyl player and it goes from track 1 to track 2 and it sounds exactly like what I know nothing is wrong. If I go to track 3 and all of a sudden it's playing something by, I don't know, Taylor Swift, suddenly that I know there's a problem. This is not what it is supposed to be, right? In reality, the actual nature of more is more like a live band, okay? It's more like jazz. It's more like improvised music. It can be changed on the spot. A live band can change what it does on the spot. A vinyl cannot change what it does on the spot. Okay? I can just move from one part of the vinyl to another and appreciate this song today and so on and so forth, but a vinyl doesn't change. If it changes, it's malfunctioning. That is our idea of more, of spirit, is like a vinyl. When our ancestors see the concept of more like a live band, a live performance, jazz. Now remember that fact, because the next thing I'm going to share is probably the reason you're here. What is the spirit behind self-sabotage? Okay, listen to this. The spirit behind self-sabotage is an Ewinsu known as Wanche. I know it is an Ewinsu because it is linked to the protection of identity, amongst many things, okay? It is a protective spirit. This particular spirit, known as Wanche, the best way to understand Wanche and the reason it has that name, and by the way, the name Wanche is baby protector, child protector, okay? Wanche is child protector. So think of Wanche like a puppy. Your self-sabotaging spirit is a puppy, and it's not a bad puppy, and it's not a puppy that's malfunctioning. It is doing exactly what it is supposed to do. But Odinala, through ritual, we know that we can train this puppy to behave a little bit more like it's supposed to. So instead of thinking, this is who I am, right? This is who I am. It's a fixed, finished recording. Think more so, the piano player is off key. Let me talk to him a little bit, see what's up. Now, we understand that the piano player is not an enemy of the band, even if they're off key. Wanche is not the enemy of the person. So let me explain this puppy known as Wanche, right? Let's say, trigger warning by the way, let's say you get a puppy and you are in an abusive relationship, okay? So you're sitting at home. Every day when you're at home, a car pulls up. The door slams. A door opens, or the keys rattle. A door opens. A man comes, starts yelling at you. It may escalate to violence. And this is a pattern that happens over and over and over and over. And then you break the relationship off. You decide to save yourself. You take your puppy and you go and live on your own, right? But every time a man comes over, the puppy starts barking or growling. Every time keys rattle, the puppy starts growling. Every time a door opens, the puppy jumps. Every time a car pulls up, the puppy starts running around, right? Trying to warn you. Hey, it's going to happen again. It's going to happen again, right? Those of us that own dogs, we know this is what it is. This is normal. You understand, right? Wanche is not only protecting you as a person, oftentimes from your traumas or maybe your ideas of yourself. Wanche is also traumatized with you. Wanche also suffers these traumas, where this spirit has felt what you have felt. And so not only are they committed to protecting you, but that spirit is also afraid. But when you have an issue with your social self-worth, that puppy will protect that low status. That puppy will make sure you don't leave. Any opening of the door is going to trigger a possible danger response, and it'll start barking, and you will respond to its barking by backing down. And that is a part of the cycle that feeds into self-sabotage. Another one of these external factors, or the bigger factors that kind of that feed the spirit, or that make the spirit behave the way it behaves, is oftentimes when this identity is threatened by change, and change can be something as small as asking somebody on a date, so on and so forth, right? When you feel that this identity is in danger of change, instead of doing the executive thing that will bring about the change, you will do a bunch of other things that in your mind you have decided are good and productive, but they're not really getting to the thing, right? So you're almost hiding from the shame of backing down from the thing you're sabotaging from. You're hiding from that shame by doing things that don't bring you shame, or doing things that you've decided bring you good social credit. I don't know. One of them is overthinking, overanalysis, overstudying, right? Overstudying. You want to understand something and you study it for months and months and months and months and months. Or you understand how to do something, and instead of just doing it, you go read about it for 2 years straight, right? Overstudying, believe it or not, is one of them. Of course, busy work, a thing called busy work. So instead of actually doing the thing, you put a bunch of processes in front of the decision or the change-making thing that make you feel like you're a productive and busy person, right? When I'm self-sabotaging, this whole place is clean, the house is clean, I fix things, and so I just do all these things that in the past I had ranked as good and positive to hide from the shame of not actually executing the thing that needs to be executed. And then ultimately, it is a stress response. Now, if you want to deal with self-sabotage through therapy or through ritual, which, by the way, like, I don't know if I said this already, but I started a ritual to help me with self-sabotage, right? Now that I've identified the spirit, I know exactly how to deal with those spirits. And so if you're interested, I've posted a video on patreon.com/the medicine shell of my exact step-by-step process. Patreon.com/the medicine shell. It's available for every tier. So whatever tier you're comfortable at, join there. Now, before you look at this, like as something you can solve through counseling or psychology, or something you can even solve through ritual or odinala, one of the things you have to consider is sometimes you just don't have the strength to do the thing. Sometimes you just don't have the strength to make the decision. Sometimes your ventral medial prefrontal cortex is not working correctly because you're vitamin deficient, you're sleep deficient, you're dehydrated, you have stress, or there's something else that is happening within your health, right, that is affecting you. Maybe your liver is not functioning all of a sudden, but you're not aware yet, right? So sometimes a spike in self-sabotage can also be a call for you to check on yourself. And before you start trying anything else, right? Before you try anything else, look at your health first. Look at your body first. Look at how you're body is being nourished and what type of environment you're in and so forth. Because oftentimes I don't want to be one of these people that put the entire thing on the person. Oftentimes it is situational rather than dispositional. But let's say you've got your vitamins up. Let's say you have began a better sleep process and so forth. One of the things we're going to do then is identify how to deal with this spirit, right? Like I said, I've done a ritual that I'm going to share on patreon.com/medicine-shell. But here's what I'm going to leave you with in this video in case you just can't join Patreon right now or you don't want to. Wanche is a puppy, right? And Wanche has to be trained the way you would train a puppy. So the ritual that I end up doing on Patreon is taking Wanche, because Wanche ultimately wants to protect. That is where Wanche gets its value from. That is where it gets its pride from. That is where it gets its strength from. The reason it's important to identify this as a spirit that's kind of closer to a puppy, or like, I wanted to say a child soldier originally, but I decided not to be grim and just dial back and say puppy, right? This particular spirit wants to protect. And the reason it's important to understand this spirit as a spirit, because in order for you to heal from it, you have to learn that it is not you. It is something that is in your greater orbit. But it's not completely you. None of these things are completely you. You understand? When we go back to the analogy of the party, if the band changes and the party continues, and the party continues. If the people leave and come and the party continues, the party continues. All of these things are components of the party, but they are not the party itself. Okay? And so in order for us to move the party or make the party into what we want it to be, we have to start understanding that we ultimately have control over all of these things that comprise the party, but that no one thing is the whole picture. So Wanche is a puppy, right? Or a small childlike spirit that wants to protect, right? It is traumatized the way you are traumatized. It is hyper vigilant about your identity, the way you, or probably more than you are. It wants to protect your identity more than you may want to protect your identity. So when you make those I am statements, I am is a very powerful statement. I am blank. A spirit will be placed there to protect that concept. Okay? So one of the things we're going to do is retrain the puppy. We're going to identify it as something that is a part of us, but it's not the whole of us, right? We're going to identify it as something that's not bad. It's not the enemy. There's something it wants to do, and that thing it wants to do situationally is good, okay? And then we are going to give it guidance and training so that it can do something else. So I am in the process of training my Wanche, my self-sabotaging spirit, from being the spirit that stops change from happening to the spirit that protects me when I go on my morning run. Okay? To the spirit that protects me when I go on my morning run. So if I go running in the morning, this spirit is going to help me watch out for traffic, repel people that have other plans for me, right? I'm actually running in the middle of the Midwest and sundown town central, so so Wanche has a job, right? Has a job to do. And so what was I saying? Yeah, so this particular spirit is going to be the spirit that protects me on as I journey, right? It's going to be protecting me when I go to different towns and different cities and so on and so forth. But it's going to protect me when I call it to come protect me. It's going to work for me when I call it to come work for me, and it's going to stay in its place when it needs to stay in the place for all other things. When it starts misbehaving, I have a method for dealing with it, right? The same way you got the little newspaper that you hit the dog, or I don't know how you train dogs these days. I don't know if that's abuse, but you hit it in the nose with it, or maybe the cat, you spray it with a little water, that kind of. I have a way to keep Wanche at bay, right? I have a way of keeping Wanche in control, but I have a way to keep Wanche in control. right? And in order for us to get to the next level where this self-sabotaging spirit goes from being smallpox to the vaccine for smallpox, we have to understand that ultimately, whether it's our enemy or our ally, it's a choice. And that's it. This is Derek O'Fodderwall with the Medicine Show. Thank you.